What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and spoiler warning for Spider-Man No Way Home. It is going to factor into this video, but this is my little theory on Sony's plans for their Spider-Verse. Given what we know currently, I'm not gonna look at that. This is all coming just off the top of my head. So I don't think it's, or rather, I think it's widely known information that there was originally going to be a Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4, and that there was originally also going to be a Mark Webb, Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man 3. And with the way that No Way Home played out, I think there's a very real possibility we might get to see a version of those films, even if they don't take off directly from where the Sam Raimi Trilogy ended, or where the Amazing Spider-Man films finished. But there is potential that we could see, for instance, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in the process of where he stopped pulling his punches, as he says in the film. And there is also a potential to see sort of like I can't remember the actual name of the storyline, but there is a storyline for Spider-Man where he is basically like the storyline where he like dies essentially. I think it's called like The Last Stand or something like that. I think it'd be really cool to see something like that with Tobey Maguire. Explore, and like you could just set up through little conversation and stuff, the different villains that he tackled in his time between his trilogy and where he is now. There's potential for the Andrew Garfield ones to bring in the special projects Sinister Six, like they were planning to, and show how it was during that he stopped pulling his punches. Yeah, there's a couple of different options. I do know that Amazing Spider-Man 3 was going to have Shailene Woodley playing Mary Jane Watson, so it was going to give him a new love interest sort of thing. I think that could be quite interesting to explore. And then obviously we've got Morbius and Craven coming for like the Venom verse stuff. We've got Across the Spider-Verse coming in the animated side of things, and we've also got another MCU trilogy focusing on Tom Holland, Peter Parker in college, which fits in with what I believe the original deal was for. I believe it was 3 trilogies plus a number of other connected films for the MCU, but basically it was going to be a high school one, a college one, and a career oriented one, like when he's working for the Bugle and becoming a scientist in his own right. And if that ends up being the case, we've got a lot more Spider-Man coming. Now, Sony makes more money off the PlayStation than they do off of their films. Their biggest film franchise is Spider-Man, and then underneath that is Fast and Furious, And at this point in time, I don't know if there's anywhere else the Fast and Furious franchise can go. I feel like it's time that they just gave that franchise a rest, let it go for, 5, maybe 10 years, and then maybe come in with like a reboot or like a legacy thing or whatever. But Spider-Man, especially right now, in this new saga, in the Multiverse saga for the MCU, there is a lot of money there to be made, especially in the co-productions with Marvel Studios, because obviously watching those films is going to unearth more lore and whatnot for other MCU films and series on Disney Plus that they can explore themselves, even if it is introduced in a Spider-Man film. And with how lucrative the MCU is, as far as film franchises go, it is currently one of the most profitable franchises. Obviously, Sony's going to want to remain there as long as they're making money. It just makes good business sense to be part of the largest pop culture franchise of the time. So I think they're gonna stay there. Their Venom stuff is gonna be its own thing. I think there's possibility at some point that they might decide to make the Spider-Man for the Venom universe Miles Morales in live action, although by the same token we do already have Aaron Davis played by Donald Glover in Spider-Man Homecoming, so in the MCU, so it could be possible to during the college trilogy have Miles come in, be sort of a student of Tom Holland's Peter Parker, and then Marvel might just outright buy the Miles Morales version of the character and then let Peter Parker go back to Sony so that they can both have their own Spider-Man, because then Kevin Feige is going to be able to have greater control over the Spider-Man movies, which obviously he would want. And then we're just going to end up getting a little Spider-Verse that's more focused on the anti-heroes and the villains, with a Spider-Man sort of connecting them all together, while we've also got a Spider-Man running around in the MCU. So yeah, and there's a lot of villains to pull from still. We saw Feast in Far From Home and in No Way Home, so it's potential we could get someone like Mr. Negative, Martin Lee, coming in at some point. Obviously for Miles Morales there's the Prowler, a decent Rhino, he's the main villain for the film, could be kind of cool. Scorpion McGargan's already been set up in the MCU. There's a whole bunch of villains that they can still pull from. And I think particularly for the Multiverse saga for the Spider-Man films in the MCU, I think it'd be really cool if we could get like Morlun and I think it's the Inheritors and Ezekiel coming in. I think that'd be really cool, sort of explain the Spider-Men as being like, explain why all of these Peter Parkers were Spider-Man, and basically in every reality the Peter Parker variant is always Spider-Man, because he is, Peter Parker being Spider-Man is an absolute point in every universe. I think that'd be really cool to explore, especially since that was introduced in What If. Absolute points are established, and I think that just sort of raises Peter Parker's status to being essentially a Nexus being. Him being Spider-Man has to happen regardless of the universe, because it is part of, like, just the destiny of the multiverse, that Peter Parker will be Spider-Man. His adventures as such wildly vary, but him being Spider-Man, that simple fact has to happen. I think that'd be kind of cool. So yeah, we'll end up getting our Morbius film, we'll end up getting Kraven the Hunter, we might get, hopefully, better than Let There Be Carnage Venom 3, a Sinister Six that focuses on the Sinister Six, where there's actually 6 members instead of 5, like the only 2 successful films with any sort of super villain team, those being Into the Spider-Verse, which had 5, being Kingpin, Tombstone, Doc Ock, Olivia Octavia, Scorpion, Prowler. That was the 5 there, and then the 5 in Far From Home being the 5 villains from the multiverse, being Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Lizard, Electro. I think there was supposed to be a 6th member, and that's what the post-credit scene was, because obviously we knew that Venom had sort of teleported into that world, and he just spent the whole film finding out the history of the MCU essentially before deciding, oh yeah, well we probably need to go talk to Peter Parker, we need to go talk to this Spider-Man, and then he went back to his own universe. Upsetting that we never get to see Venom actually get to attach to Peter Parker and therefore take on the spider emblem and the web slinging, but there's always the Peter Parker of his universe if they decide to go the route of absolute points being Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So there's always time. So yeah, so there's a bunch of different films that they've got either that they had been working on and then scrapped because Spider-Man 3 didn't do so well, or they made the deal with Marvel, or whatever it might have been. There are a bunch of different ways they can go, a bunch of different films that they're developing that we know are coming. And I just think that Sony's going to want to be leaning more and more into this. We're connected because of the multiverse element that No Way Home gave them, by actually bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina and Thomas Hayden Church and Rhys Ifans and Jamie Foxx. By bringing all of these actors back to play the characters they had played in their respective Spider-Man films, they've very much been like, yeah, no, these universes are run parallel to the MCU and are among the timelines that we saw branch off in Loki, and therefore have retroactively been put into MCU canon, essentially, by way of the multiverse. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they do a similar thing with the X-Men, although that's a completely different video, to be completely honest. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. But otherwise, very exciting stuff coming. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if, for instance, the Craven film, which I must say, I'm very interested to see how that film goes without a Spider-Man in the Venom universe at the moment. I'm interested to see what that film's going to be. But if it does really well, whoever they've got to play Craven, if they're not already playing a major character in the MCU, it'll be interesting to see if they'll cross over the same way that Charlie Cox's Daredevil has, and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. Because if those characters can cross over from Netflix and be just now part of the MCU, and all the Sony stuff can come through in a shared Sony Marvel Studios production, will Sony let their Craven come in to hunt Tom Holland after the Craven film? If it's really popular, will they let that character cross the multiverse to hunt down other Spider-Man? I think that could be kind of interesting to see. Or will we just be focusing on like characters like Chameleon in the MCU, who has already been cast? He was the chauffeur, sort of bus driver in No Way Home. Sorry, in Far From Home, rather. He was part of Team Mysterio. But in the comics, he is brothers or cousins, some way related to Kraven the Hunter. So it's not that far of a leap to say that Kraven could be in the MCU already. And then in that case, they just go with the idea of variants. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, as well as, while you're up there, ringing that notification bell turns on those push notifications so you stay up to date when I upload new videos. If you enjoyed this one, please give a big thumbs up. And until next time, guys, keep your head screwed on.